bring in Rogers Holdings Chairman Jim Rogers. Jim, always great to have you on a day like this or a week like this to give us some perspective. What do you make of the recent selling that we've seen to kick off the new year?
The recent selling in the U.S. or in Europe or where?
Everywhere. It's been a global sell-off.
Well, you're right. It seems to me, if I were guessing, I would say it's probably because of what's happening in the Middle East. You know, the Middle East is a tinderbox and could well break out into war any time. Everybody seems to make mistakes. Of course, the economies in the U.S. and Europe and other places are slowing down, too. So there are many reasons.
So you're a big study of China. You have long been watching these markets, the economy there. I'm surprised, Jim, to not hear you point to China for reasons of this sell-off, because so many are pointing to the unexpected slowdown in the economy there for the recent weakness. Well,
I think the economies are slowing everywhere. China is the second largest economy in the world, so it qualifies as part of everywhere. Yes, but you know, last year the Chinese stock market was one of the strongest in the world, so it certainly deserves to be down this year. It was much stronger than the U.S. last year. So I question, did it start in the U.S.? Did it start in Europe, where most markets were down, and China's now catching up? It should catch up. It has been very strong.
All right, so where are you putting your money in 2016? What do you like as we start a new year?
Well, I'm not really putting my money. I'm mainly watching. I'm short the U.S., as I've discussed with you all before, and I'm long China. I'm looking for maybe more shorts in junk bonds. I certainly would like to short more junk U.S. bonds, and I'm looking for opportunities.
And oftentimes, Jim, you look for opportunities in the commodities markets. You and I have been talking about things like oil and gold for quite some time. You've been watching copper. What do you make of the recent moves that we've seen in the commodities markets? Anything you particularly like there or don't like?
Well, I prefer agriculture, but I have for a while. Oil seems to be making a complicated bottom. If you look at, I'm not a technician, but I know how they think. And when lots of bad news comes and oil or something doesn't go down, then it may be making a bottom. There's been plenty of bad news, and yet oil doesn't make new lows. So it may be in the process of making a bottom.
Hey, Jim, John Hilsenrath from the Wall Street Journal.
Jim, when you see selling like we've seen in the last couple of days at the beginning of the year, does that tell us anything about how the rest of the year is going to look? Or were the last couple of days just like any set of days, just volatility that you can't read from which you can't read the future?
Well, John, it's a very, very good question, and certainly should be addressed. Normally, if you have a lot of selling pressure in the first 5 days, is the rule of thumb, it means that the year is probably going to be down. It's probably not going to be a good year, and we've only had 2 days in the rest of the world, 1 day in the U.S. It has been pretty significant selling. So if history's any guide, it may be a problem.
And why is that? Is that because institutional investors were just kind of sitting on their portfolios to year end, and then once they got through the end of last year, they decided to dump what they had, and they didn't want to do it before marking their portfolios for the previous year?
Well, that assumes that it's a bad year coming up. Suppose that they waited till the end of the year and then they rushed in to buy, as they often do, and that usually portends a good year. So I think it's much more complicated than that. Historically, the first 5 days, if they're down, the year is going to be down. And if the first 5 days are up, the year is going to be up. I guess, John, it's because people read the Wall Street Journal, figure out what's going to be happening, check with Fox News, and then make their decision.
Hey, Jim, it's Dagan McDowell. Happy New Year, my dear. You talked about short and junk. What about other corporate credit here in the United States? Are you concerned about knock-on effects among higher-grade debt? And you've never been a fan of how the U.S. government manages its finances. What about treasuries at this point?
Well, Dagan, Happy New Year to you, too. I'm delighted to see you. I'm not shorting treasuries. I'm shorting junk. Maybe I should be shorting everything, but I'm shorting junk because the spreads got so narrow, at least for a while, that if they're going to be problems, they're going to show up first in the junk bond market. Later on, we should probably short all bonds, corporates, high-grade corporates, governments, and everything else. But my initial foray has been in junk bonds, and I've been shorting them for a while. So it's not that new. You asked what I wanted to do next. I want to short more of those if given the opportunity.
Hey, Jim, Sandra again. I interviewed you shortly after Donald Trump launched his campaign for the presidency, and you told us that a Donald Trump presidency would lead to bankruptcy and war. Have you changed your opinion of him at all?
No, absolutely not. I mean, if you keep reading what he says, you see that everything he says sounds like trade war, bashing. I mean, if he does the things he says he's going to do, that historically has been disastrous for economies. It's been trade wars. It's been bankruptcy, and bankruptcy, major nations going bankrupt, usually leads to war. But Sandra, as you know, because you know history, whenever a country has problems, a man or a woman on a white horse comes riding in with simple answers and says, "I'll save you." And everybody says, "Thank goodness, we need a savior." But unfortunately, trade wars and bashing other countries usually has not worked.
Are you endorsing any specific candidate?
No, I'm watching. I'm happy to tell you, Sandra, I've never voted for a winning president in my entire life. I look back on the people who've been president in my lifetime. I am extremely proud of that record.
All right. Jim Rogers, always good to have you, sir. Happy New Year to you.
My pleasure. Happy New Year to all of you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well